The 22 Murders of Madison May by Max Berry follows a journalist named Felicity Staples, who gets involved in a chilling murder investigation after a young real estate agent, Madison May, is murdered. The story dives into a complex and sinister plot across multiple dimensions, where Madison seems to be repeatedly killed by a man named Clayton Hors, who is fixated on her across various parallel worlds. As Felicity digs deeper, she finds herself navigating a reality-bending nightmare where Madison's killer is able to travel between worlds, seeking her out in different lives. This high-stakes thriller combines suspense and science fiction, exploring themes of obsession, identity, and fate as Felicity races to prevent Madison's next inevitable murder. The opening chapter thrusts us into a seemingly ordinary day in Madison May's life, but as we dig deeper, hints of danger lurk beneath the surface of routine. Madison May, a young and somewhat disenchanted real estate agent, arrives at a dilapidated property in Jamaica, Queens. The house, a run-down 1960s clapboard with thigh-high weeds and a decaying mailbox, might look unremarkable to most. But to Madison, it's her job to make it shine. Her mentor at Henshaw Realty has drilled into her the basics of successful home selling: teeth, tits, and hair. So, despite the heat and the crumbling walls, Madison preps herself for another sales pitch, hoping to charm the potential buyer waiting outside. The prospective buyer, Clay, arrives promptly. He's young and good-looking, though unassuming in a way that makes Madison lower her guard. As he steps out of the car, his slightly awkward manner is endearing. He even compliments her height, a comment she brushes off by pointing out her heels. She notices, however, a strange bruise on his forearm, a mix of purple and red as though from a wound that hasn't healed properly. When she asks, he says it's from his dog, which is a little crazy sometimes. The explanation strikes her as odd, but she waves it off as they step inside. Madison tries her best to sell the property, even turning on a playlist of sell music on her phone. Soft pianos and subtle strings that help mask the house's poor state. Yet, as she leads Clay through the dim rooms, something feels off. He seems oddly familiar, even as he maintains a strange intensity, watching her every move. As they walk through the house, Clay asks about her career in real estate. She laughs off his curiosity, saying she enjoys houses and that every home has something to love. But as the conversation progresses, she feels a growing discomfort. He doesn't seem interested in the house. Instead, his focus is entirely on her, his gaze lingering and his smile tightening. When Madison's phone stops playing, she steps toward the kitchen to grab it. But when she returns, Clay has vanished from view. She calls out, "Hello?" There's no answer. Panic wells in her chest, but she reminds herself to stay calm. It's just a house showing. After all, these things happen. But as she turns, Clay appears again, stepping out from a darkened corner, and her heart skips a beat. His tone is low, almost pleading. "I'm really sorry to do this like this," he says, an ominous apology. She realizes he's blocking her exit. Her instincts scream for her to run, but she forces herself to stay composed. "Can you just stop?" she says, trying to keep her voice steady. "I am actually freaked out. Madison, you have to trust me," he says. "I don't want to hurt you. I'm here for you." His voice holds a twisted earnestness as he edges closer. She's horrified and confused, but something keeps her frozen. Finally, he says the words that chill her to the bone. "I've traveled here for you, only for you, Madison." The revelation is absurd. A trap. From where? Before she can make sense of it, Clay steps closer, almost tenderly. His voice shifts, and Madison feels the eerie familiarity deepen. She can barely process his words when he tells her, "I love you, Madison, in every world." As he reaches for her, Madison bolts, her survival instincts overriding the shock and terror that have been holding her captive. But Clay is faster. She lets out a scream, hoping the neighbors, or maybe the kids playing down the street, will hear her. But it's no use. She struggles against him, but he's stronger, holding her down with chilling ease. Madison catches a glimpse of a silver case on the floor, a box of metal tools she hadn't noticed before. And in the moment, she understands. This was no coincidence. Clay's face hardens with regret as he moves in closer, a hand over her mouth, muffling her final scream. His voice is soft and distant as he says, "I really hate this. I hate it every time." And with that, the scene fades to black, leaving Madison's fate hanging ominously in the air as her cries dissolve into silence. In the bustling, weathered newsroom of the New York Daily News, or Felicity Staples is knee deep in her usual beat, covering local politics and society stories. The clock on the wall ticks loudly, a constant reminder of time slipping by, of deadlines, and of the shrinking relevance of print news. She's aware that, in a world driven by quick, clickable stories, her job's future is far from secure. But Felicity is a serious journalist, and she finds solace in her work until the call comes through. Todd, the newsroom intern, approaches her desk with a murder lead that crime reporter Levy usually covers. Felicity tries to wave him off. Crime isn't her specialty. Yet, when Todd says that the victim was a young woman murdered while showing a house, something nags at her. From an inexplicable feeling she can't shake, she takes the address, determined to investigate, even if it's just to scratch an itch. Arriving at the crime scene, Felicity steps into a storm of police tape, uniformed officers, and cameras flashing through the grimy windows of an abandoned house. She catches a glimpse of a local news anchor setting up nearby, ready to broadcast the grisly story to New Yorkers glued to their evening TV. For Felicity, though, it's different. There's something deeply unsettling about this case. Detective Jim Henry, a CSU detective, lets her into the house on a limited basis. She steps gingerly through the cramped, darkened rooms, her shoes sinking slightly into the carpet stained with the scent of dampness and something more sinister. She stops in the bedroom where a message has been slashed into the wall. Estiope. Below it is a strange symbol, carved deep into the drywall, as if left as a warning. Felicity's instincts as a journalist spark to life. Who was Madison May? Why was she murdered so brutally? And what does this message mean? Then, as Felicity turns to leave, she notices a man standing outside, watching the scene. He's broad-shouldered, with a beard and a cap pulled down low over his face, obscuring his eyes. Despite the police presence, he stands still. Unmoved by the rain, his gaze locked on the house. She doesn't know what it is. Perhaps the way he watches everything so intently, or his seeming detachment from the horror around him. But he leaves her with a strange sense of foreboding. Back at her desk, Felicity digs into Madison's life, combing through her online presence and professional background. The Henshaw Realty website shows Madison's smiling face, a hopeful young woman who doesn't seem like she'd be anyone's target. But then Felicity finds out more. Madison was only 22, new to the city, and had no known enemies. It doesn't add up. Our Felicity follows her gut, hoping for a new angle. There's something that could explain why a real estate agent's life would end so violently. As she continues her investigation, Felicity discovers a lead, a name linked to Madison's appointment that day, Clayton Hors. The eerie familiarity of the name clicks in her mind as she recalls the man in the cap, from outside the crime scene. A call to Henshaw Realty reveals that Clayton was indeed scheduled to meet with Madison. Even stranger, Madison had taken his photograph at the start of the showing. As part of Henshaw Realty's security protocol, he let her take his picture, and then he killed her. The chilling revelation hits Felicity like a physical blow, leaving her reeling. She reaches out to the police, who confirm they're looking for Clayton Hors, but they aren't close to capturing him yet. Felicity feels an increasing sense of urgency. She senses something much deeper and darker connecting Madison and Clayton, something beyond her understanding. She follows the breadcrumb trail of information, tracing Clayton's background and learning that he had recently dropped out of college and has no significant history. Nothing except a list of strange, cryptic remarks made by acquaintances who allude to his obsession with someone from another world, unable to turn away. Our Felicity digs deeper, even as her colleagues dismiss her focus on the story. She pores over the case file and keeps her eyes open for updates from the police, but she's haunted by what she has found. Her discovery only raises more questions. Who was Clayton Hors really? Why would he kill a young woman he'd only just met? And what does this bizarre, haunting obsession mean for Madison, and possibly for others like her, as Felicity's curiosity turns to a fixation of her own? She begins to suspect that Madison's murder may be just the beginning of a much larger and more sinister story. In her gut, she feels that this isn't simply a matter of a tragic killing. It's something altogether stranger and more dangerous. The more Felicity Staples uncovers about Madison May's life and Clayton Hors's fixation, the stranger things become. A once straightforward murder story is beginning to shift into something otherworldly. And Felicity's instincts tell her that Madison's story is far from over. She's determined to piece together the puzzle, no matter how bizarre and outlandish it becomes. As Felicity dives into Clayton Hors's background, she unearths a disturbing pattern. Not only does Clayton seem obsessed with Madison, he has been linked to multiple women with eerily similar profiles, young, vibrant, with some kind of spark that drew him in. Each of these women met the same tragic end, brutally murdered in isolated spaces, much like Madison. The case files Felicity finds point to something impossible. The murders seem to stretch across different states, and even across the country, with no logical way for one person to be linked to all of them. After scoring the police files, Felicity encounters something even stranger, a second report of a woman named Madison May in another state, killed in nearly identical circumstances. This Madison was also a real estate agent, killed while showing an empty property. The discovery shakes Felicity. What's going on here? She wonders. Are there two Madisons? Or is she dealing with something far darker and more twisted, determined to find answers? Felicity contacts a retired detective, someone who once worked on one of the early Madison cases. He's cryptic at first, cautious, but eventually he confides something that leaves her reeling. Clayton Hors isn't like other killers. He doesn't just kill women. He kills the same woman again and again. The detective hints at Clayton's claim of traveling from another world. The words sound ludicrous, but they linger with Felicity, pushing her to dig deeper. As Felicity examines the cases further, she finds that each murder scene bears the same strange message she saw on the wall at Madison's crime scene in Queens. SOP, the word carved in harsh jagged letters, is paired with a bizarre, intricate symbol. Felicity begins to suspect the symbol is a mark, perhaps a signature, left by Clayton as a twisted attempt to communicate, perhaps even a warning. This trail of identical murders drives Felicity to confront a horrifying realization. Each victim wasn't just similar to Madison May. Each was Madison, living different lives in what appeared to be parallel worlds. Somehow, each of these Madisons exists in alternate versions of reality, in lives that are almost the same, but slightly shifted. And in every one of these worlds, Clayton finds her, drawn to her like a magnet, and kills her. Through old police records and news clippings, Felicity finally pieces together Clayton's fixation. She learns that in each of these worlds, Clayton claims to love Madison, seeing himself as her soulmate. But his devotion twists into violence when she inevitably rejects him. As Felicity pores over the files, a disturbing pattern becomes clear. Clayton believes he and Madison are meant to be together. His devotion is so extreme that if he can't have her, he'd rather see her dead. It's an obsession that transcends boundaries of reality, space, and time. Terrified yet fascinated, Felicity realizes she is now tangled in a killer's warped, interdimensional web. The urgency builds within her. How many more lives of Madison May will end in violence if Clayton continues? The realization hits Felicity like a tidal wave. She might be the only one who can stop him. The only one with enough pieces of the puzzle to see the full, horrifying picture. She resolves to put an end to this nightmare, even if it means risking her own safety. But the deeper she digs, the more she feels she's being watched. She notices Clayton's unsettling presence in unexpected places. On the street, in a coffee shop, even outside her own apartment late at night. Is it her imagination, or is he following her? Could he see her as a threat to his twisted love story with Madison, or perhaps as his next obsession? These chapters draw Felicity deeper into a supernatural nightmare, where she begins to grasp that she is in a race not only to save Madison, but to stay one step ahead of a killer who seems to be haunting her every move. The stakes couldn't be higher. And Felicity realizes that her only way out is through a confrontation with Clayton Hors that may lead her into a darkness she can't come back from. Felicity Staples is in over her head, but she's not about to back down. By now, she's deep into the unsettling mystery of Madison May's murders across parallel worlds. Her initial skepticism about Clayton Hors's bizarre claim of moving from another world has faded in the face of mounting evidence. Each crime scene, each Madison feels like an eerie echo of the last. It's becoming clear to her that Clayton is indeed capable of crossing dimensions, and she fears he's far closer than she originally thought. Through late-night research and clandestine meetings with detectives, Felicity gathers more and more proof that Clayton's trail isn't bound by conventional logic. Madison's murders span years and regions, but no one has connected them until now because, technically, each Madison is from a different version of reality. The idea is staggering, but Felicity feels compelled to follow this path, no matter how strange. As she looks over police files and newspaper clippings late into the night, a shiver runs through her. How can one man jump from one world to another, hunting the same woman over and over, determined to dig deeper? She begins visiting old crime scenes and questioning witnesses who encountered Clayton. She learns that he often appears seemingly out of nowhere and disappears just as quickly. One witness, an old landlord who rented a dinghy room to him, recalls seeing strange devices, an odd contraption with blinking lights and wires, when Clayton left. It was like a little piece of science fiction. The man mutters, shaking his head. Felicity realizes that Clayton must be using some kind of interdimensional device to move between these worlds. But where did he get it? And more importantly, How is he choosing these versions of Madison? In her search for answers, Felicity contacts a physicist friend who reluctantly explains the possibility of quantum tunneling, a theoretical method of moving across dimensions. Though it's still in the realm of fantasy, he admits the science behind it isn't entirely impossible. This insight sends Felicity into a spiral of sleepless nights, piecing together connections and calculating the impossible odds. She becomes convinced that Clayton has access to technology far beyond what ordinary people have ever seen, a technology that allows him to tunnel into alternate versions of reality. During her investigation, Felicity encounters another Madison, a woman who bears a striking resemblance to the previous victim, but lives a completely different life. In this world, Madison May is an aspiring chef who has never even considered a career in real estate. When Felicity approaches her, Madison is naturally wary, but after some coaxing, she listens. "There's someone after you." "Madison," Felicity says urgently. "A man who's done this before. He won't stop." But the Madison of this world can't believe her. "How do you even know this?" she asks, incredulous and frightened. "You're crazy." Despite her skepticism, Felicity's intensity unsettles her, planting a seed of doubt that will haunt Madison long after their meeting. Watching her walk away, Felicity realizes she may have only made things worse by reaching out. Clayton might be watching her, tracking her movements, and now another Madison's life is on the line. In the days that follow, Felicity becomes haunted by the feeling of being watched. She's increasingly aware of people in the periphery, of shadows lingering behind her in quiet streets and figures loitering near her apartment. Each time, her heart races, thinking it might be Clayton. Her paranoia grows until one night, she catches sight of a figure standing outside her building. He wears a dark hoodie and stands unnervingly still, his face obscured. Her pulse quickens as she hurries upstairs, feeling as though Clayton could appear at any moment. Unable to shake her growing fear, Felicity sets a trap. She contacts Madison's family in each reality she has been able to locate, warning them in vague terms, hoping she can create a web of protection. But Felicity knows it won't be enough. She needs to confront Clayton herself, if only to understand the twisted mind that has led to so many lives lost. Finally, her obsession with finding him pays off. Though following a string of sightings, she tracks him to a motel on the outskirts of the city. The room is dingy, with the smell of mildew, but she pushes through, her flashlight cutting through the shadows. And then she sees it. The device. It's tucked in a corner, blinking quietly, a mix of wires, metal, and strange-looking components. It's crude but complex, like something out of a low-budget sci-fi film, and it hums with an unsettling energy. The sight is chilling, proof that Clayton's claims are true, that he's capable of traversing worlds in his unrelenting search for Madison. As Felicity approaches the device, she hears a noise behind her. She freezes, her breath catching. She turns slowly, her eyes landing on Clayton himself, watching her with an eerie calm, as if he knew she'd eventually come. "I told you to stay out of this," he says, but his voice dangerously soft. But Felicity has come too far to stop now. She demands to know why he's so obsessed with Madison, why he believes he has the right to take her life again and again. Clayton's expression shifts to something almost reverent as he explains. To him, Madison is an eternal figure, a soulmate scattered across multiple dimensions, each version of her containing something unique and irreplaceable. But every time he finds her, she rejects him, unable to reciprocate his love. His obsession spirals each time he meets her, his desperation growing as he realizes he'll never have her, driving him to commit murder to preserve her perfection, even if only in death. Felicity's horror grows with every word. She realizes she's not only dealing with a man who kills, that she's dealing with a man who kills because he believes it's the only way to capture Madison's essence. It's a chilling reflection of his madness, one that she's forced to face head-on. As she stands in that dim motel room, Clayton's device humming ominously in the corner, Felicity realizes that stopping him will require her to go beyond conventional methods. She has to be willing to face him in his own realm, a place between worlds. But as she leaves, feeling his cold eyes on her back, she wonders if she'll be able to survive her own descent into Clayton's twisted, interdimensional hunt. Felicity Staples is in a relentless race against time. She knows now that Clayton Hors isn't just any killer. He's a predator moving through alternate realities, hunting the same woman, Madison May, across countless worlds. Felicity's brush with Clayton has made her, and she finds herself drifting further from her own life, isolated by her relentless mission. With her options running out, Felicity reaches out to Detective Jim Henry, who helped her gain access to Madison's initial crime scene. At first, McHenry is skeptical, dismissing her theory of interdimensional travel as the product of too much stress. But Felicity's resolve is unbreakable, and she presents him with undeniable evidence. The consistent patterns in each Madison's murder, the strange symbols left at every scene, and witness testimonies describing a man fitting Clayton's description disappearing without a trace. Reluctantly, McHenry begins to take her seriously, and together, they form a dangerous plan to catch Clayton. Felicity proposes setting a trap, one that would lure Clayton to another Madison, whom she suspects might be his next target. But Felicity knows the risk. If Clayton realizes he's being hunted, he may target her directly, despite the danger. She's willing to take the chance. McHenry, torn between disbelief and a sense of duty, agrees to help, though he insists on involving only the most trusted members of his team. The plan is to monitor every known Madison, keeping them safe while Felicity narrows down which Madison Clayton will go after next. But the clock is ticking, and Felicity knows that Clayton's obsession will drive him to make his next move sooner rather than later. The pressure mounts as Felicity and McHenry track the Madisons they suspect are in the greatest danger. Late one night, Felicity receives an anonymous tip, an address where Clayton was reportedly seen near a town in upstate New York. She drives through the night, her heart racing, dreading what she might find. When she arrives, the quiet suburban street is eerily empty. She creeps up to the house and peers through a window, her pulse quickening as she sees someone inside. It's Madison, a different Madison, one Felicity hasn't met before. She's sitting alone, unaware of the looming danger. But then Felicity notices a shadow moving outside the house, lurking by the edge of the yard. She freezes, her breath catching. It's Clayton. He's found her. Thinking fast, Felicity grabs her phone, dialing McHenry's number, while her eyes stay locked on Clayton's shadow. She whispers urgently, "He's here. I need backup." Now, McHenry assures her that he's dispatching a team. But Felicity knows it will take time for them to arrive. Every second feels like an eternity as she watches Clayton inch closer to the house, his silhouette dark against the glow from Madison's window. Desperate to protect Madison, Felicity hatches a daring plan. She steps out from her hiding place, calling out to Clayton in a low, steady voice. "Clayton," she yells, drawing his attention. He turns, his eyes locking on her, surprised but intrigued. She can see the intensity of his fixation in his gaze. It's not just Madison he wants anymore. It's her, Felicity. the only person who's come close to understanding his twisted desires. Clayton's expression shifts to one of eerie calm as he takes a step toward her. "I was wondering when you'd finally come out, Felicity," he says, his voice a chilling mixture of amusement and admiration. "You think you know me, but you don't understand what Madison means to me." As Clayton advances, Felicity begins leading him away from Madison's house, her heart pounding as she guides him deeper into the shadows. "Madison doesn't belong to you," she says defiantly. "She never has, and she never will." Their voices echo in the dark as they walk, a dangerous game of cat and mouse unfolding between them. Felicity can feel the tension mounting, but she remains steady, buying time till McHenry's team arrives. Clayton, oblivious to the trap, seems entranced, his attention completely absorbed by her. In his mind, Felicity is a new version of Madison, a fresh challenge, someone he believes he can claim. Finally, Felicity reaches the edge of the woods near the town, where McHenry and his team have been waiting, hidden. She knows this is her chance, her one shot to end Clayton's killing spree for good. She stops, standing her ground as Clayton approaches, a menacing look in his eyes. He seems to sense that something has shifted, that the game he thought he was winning is slipping out of his control. "Why are you fighting this, Felicity?" he says, his voice smooth but laced with anger. "You, I were alike. You understand my obsession." Felicity shakes her head, her voice steady as she replies, "I'm nothing like you, Clayton. You destroy everything you touch. Madison deserves a life free from you. And so do all the others you've hunted." Her hand hovers over the signal device McHenry gave her, ready to alert the team. She just needs Clayton to take one more step. But he pauses, his eyes narrowing. "You think you're clever, don't you?" he hisses. "This won't end here. I'll find Madison again in another world. I'll keep searching until she finally understands what we have." Felicity's grip tightens on the signal device, and just as Clayton lunges, she presses it, sending a silent alarm to McHenry's team. Before Clayton can react, officers surround him, their guns drawn, barking orders to freeze. Clayton's face twists with fury, his calm exterior shattering as he realizes he's been trapped. But Clayton isn't finished yet. He glances around, searching for a way out, his gaze flicking toward the tree line. In a last-ditch effort, he bolts, attempting to escape. Felicity sprints after him, her determination fueled by the faces of every Madison he's hurt, every life he's destroyed. She chases him into the woods, her footsteps pounding against the forest floor. As they reach a clearing, Clayton stumbles, his path blocked by a steep drop-off. Cornered, he turns to face her, his eyes wild and desperate. For the first time, Felicity sees something beyond the obsession, a flicker of fear, a sense that he knows he's been defeated. "This is over, Clayton," Felicity says, her voice unyielding. "You'll never touch Madison again." In a final, defiant act, Clayton gives her a twisted smile, as if to say that even in defeat, he has won. But before he can react further, McHenry's team arrives, their flashlights cutting through the darkness surrounding him. Felicity steps back as they close in, watching as Clayton is finally subdued, his reign of terror brought to an end. In the days that follow, Felicity works tirelessly to tell Madison's story. Her article revealing the dark truth behind Clayton's obsession and the extraordinary lengths he went to pursue her across dimensions. The world may never fully understand the terror Clayton inflicted, but Felicity knows that Madison and countless other lives have been saved. With Clayton behind bars and the device destroyed, Felicity begins to rebuild her life. Haunted by the memories of her ordeal, but finding solace in the knowledge that she has freed Madison. She's changed by the experience, scarred but stronger, her resolve unbreakable. As she sits at her desk, finalizing her story, she reflects on the courage it took to face down a killer from another world. And while she knows there are other dangers out there, other mysteries she may never solve, she takes comfort in one truth. She defeated Clayton Hors, and she's reclaimed her life and her sense of purpose. Felicity Staples has uncovered the horrifying truth about Clayton Hors, his twisted obsession with Madison May, and his terrifying ability to move between parallel worlds to find her. She's come face to face with the device that allows him to do it, and she knows there's no one left to save Madison but her. But as Felicity prepares to make her next move, she senses that Clayton is one step ahead, and that her life might be in just as much danger as Madison's. Felicity is growing increasingly paranoid. Every shadow seems to follow her, and every stranger feels like a threat. Convinced that Clayton is watching her, she avoids her usual routines, staying away from her apartment and sleeping in different places each night. Despite her precautions, the sense of Clayton's looming presence is impossible to shake. She knows she's getting too close for his comfort, and she's sure he's coming for her. Determined to gain some control, Felicity sets a trap. She reaches out to the Madison she recently warned, the aspiring chef, on the pretext of conducting a follow-up interview. Madison is hesitant, but Felicity's urgency convinces her, and they agree to meet at a public park. Felicity hopes, by putting herself in a controlled, public setting, she can draw Clayton out. But when she arrives at the park, Madison is already there, looking anxious and on edge. Felicity's got twists. She knows she's endangered this Madison simply by involving her. She warns Madison to leave the city, but to get as far away as possible. But just as she's saying goodbye, Felicity catches sight of Clayton across the park, watching them both. Clayton approaches slowly, his gaze fixed on Madison with a disturbing calm, as if they're the only two people in the world. Felicity tries to step between them, but Clayton's focus never wavers. In a last-ditch effort, Felicity shouts for help, hoping to attract attention from passers-by. People start to look, but Clayton's cool demeanor never falters. As police sirens begin to wail in the distance, he turns and walks away, vanishing into the crowd. Shaken, Felicity realizes that Clayton is a master at evading attention. She's beginning to understand the depth of his intelligence and ruthlessness. She's outmatched. She knows that now, and she can't protect Madison alone. Desperate, she reaches out to her editor, Levy, and confides in him, sharing what she's discovered about Clayton's interdimensional ability. She doesn't expect him to believe her, but Levy listens, his initial skepticism turning to worry as he sees the intensity in her eyes. Felicity, this sounds insane, but I can tell you believe it, he says, his face tight with concern. He urges her to let it go, to focus on something else. But Felicity can't. You don't understand, she tells him. If I don't stop, he'll keep killing, again and again, and next time it might be me. Levy gives her a resigned. Then don't face him alone. With her editor's reluctant support, Felicity sets her plan in motion. She traces Clayton's steps across past crime scenes, hoping to find a pattern in his behavior. She discovers a chilling consistency. In every world, Clayton becomes fixated on Madison as soon as he meets her. He tries to win her affection, and when that fails, he escalates, eventually murdering her in a grotesque ritual of obsession. But there's one variation in each case, a fleeting detail in each Madison's life that hints at a way to evade Clayton. Felicity realizes She needs to get into his head to understand his mindset well enough to predict his next move. In a dangerous gamble, she starts following Clayton's routine, visiting places he frequents and observing people he interacts with. She wants to make herself as visible as possible to bait him out. She's become his prey, and the sense of impending confrontation gnaws at her nerves. Her plan works. Late one night, as she leaves a cafe where she knows Clayton has been before, Felicity feels his presence behind her. She turns slowly, her heart pounding, and sees him standing a few feet away. Watching her with the same unnerving intensity she's seen in his gaze toward Madison. The look on his face is almost intimate, as if he's savoring this moment between them. "You're making a mistake. Felicity," he says softly, "you don't belong in this. You don't understand what we have." Felicity steels herself, keeping her voice steady. "I understand that you're a monster, Clayton. I understand that you're sick." Clayton's expression flickers, and for a moment, Felicity thinks she's gotten through to him. But then his face darkens, a dangerous glint in his eyes. "You think you can stop me," he whispers. "I've crossed worlds to find her. Do you know what that means? How deep it goes?" As he moves toward her, Felicity realizes she has only seconds to act. She backs away, glancing around for any possible escape route. Then, she spots a stairwell leading down into the subway. With a burst of adrenaline, she bolts, running as fast as she can down the stairs, her footsteps echoing against the tile walls. She hears Clayton following, his footsteps unnervingly calm, methodical, as if he's sure she has nowhere to go. Felicity weaves through the subway platform, dodging commuters as she desperately searches for an exit. The rumble of an approaching train fills the air, and she darts toward it, hoping to lose him in the crowded cars. She leaps onto the train just as the doors begin to close, pressing herself against the window as she watches Clayton's face disappear behind her. His gaze lingers, unblinking, until the train pulls away, carrying her into the dark tunnel. As the train rattles through the city, Felicity is gripped by the realization of how close she came to being another one of Clayton's victims. She knows that she's not safe, not even with the miles of city streets and subway tunnels between them. Clayton has proven that he can follow her anywhere, even into the depths of her own world. She is his next obsession, and she knows he won't stop until he has her. Gasping for breath, she begins to formulate her final plan, knowing she must find a way to protect both herself and the next Madison. She has to end Clayton's reign of terror before he ends her. In this climactic final chapter, Felicity Staples finds herself face to face with Clayton Hors in a confrontation that transcends the boundaries of any world she's ever known. She's reached her breaking point, having narrowly escaped Clayton's grasp once before, and she knows that running is no longer an option. Madison May's fate, and potentially her own, depends on ending Clayton's interdimensional obsession once and for all. Felicity is determined to stop him, but she knows it won't be easy. She revisits her findings, connecting every detail, every pattern in Clayton's behavior that she's uncovered so far. There's only one place left where she believes she can lure him, a secluded location connected to the very first Madison murder she uncovered, one that could trigger the ritualistic side of Clayton's mania. The stakes are painfully clear. Either she finishes this, or she becomes his next victim. Felicity prepares her trap, armed with everything she's learned about Clayton, and she chooses an isolated location, an abandoned industrial complex on the outskirts of town where Clayton had once killed another Madison. It's an echo of past murders and a place Clayton knows well. with empty rooms and hidden spaces that could either help her or spell her doom. She positions herself inside, waiting, every sense heightened. She's left a trail of clues for him to follow, an invitation that only Clayton could decipher. Her heart races, each creak of the building causing her to jump, but she forces herself to stay calm. She's spent days strategizing, considering every possibility, but now that she's in the moment, fear gnaws at her resolve. What if I can't do this? What if he finds me first? She thinks, but she pushes the doubts aside. Madison May deserves justice, and so does every version of her that Clayton has hunted. The sound of footsteps breaks the silence, and Felicity's breath catches. She hears Clayton's voice echoing through the empty halls, taunting, calm yet menacing. "Felicity, you've been busy," he calls out, his voice reverberating off the walls. "Did you think you could actually understand me? You don't belong in this. This is between me and Madison." Felicity steps forward, forcing herself to keep her voice steady. "There is no you in Madison, Clayton. She doesn't love you. She never will." Silence. Then Clayton laughs, a cold, humorless sound. "That's where you're wrong," he says, emerging from the shadows. His face is calm, almost serene, but his eyes glint with a chilling, possessive intensity. "Every Madison is mine, in every world. She doesn't understand now, but she will. I just need one last chance." Felicity feels a surge of anger. There is no world where she chooses you, Clayton. She rejects you every time because she can see who you really are. A killer. His face twists with fury, but he quickly masks it, shrugging as if her words are inconsequential. "You wouldn't understand. You're just an obstacle, another hurdle between us. But that's okay," he says, taking a step closer. "I can get rid of you, too." With Clayton moving toward her, Felicity quickly retreats into the maze of empty rooms, her every step echoing in the eerie silence. She can hear his slow, measured footsteps behind her, calm and methodical, as if he has all the time in the world. He's playing with her, enjoying the chase. Felicity's mind races, and she realizes she needs to turn the tables. She has to outthink him, to anticipate his moves the way she'd seen in the pattern of his kills. As she weaves through the dark corridors, she leaves behind false trails, knowing that Clayton's obsession with Madison will compel him to follow. She finds an old storeroom filled with broken glass and rusted pipes, perfect for her purposes. She positions herself in the shadows, waiting. The plan is simple but risky. Draw him in, throw him off balance, and strike when he's vulnerable. The seconds stretch, feeling like an eternity, and then he's there, his figure silhouetted against the weak light filtering through a cracked window. "Felicity," he whispers, his voice thick with anticipation. "I know you're here. You're not as clever as you think." But Felicity has prepared for this. In one swift movement, she kicks a rusted pipe across the floor, sending a loud clang echoing through the room. Clayton spins toward the noise, momentarily distracted. She lunges, swinging a heavy piece of metal she'd found, aiming for his head. It connects, and he staggers back, surprised but not defeated. He recovers quickly, his face contorting with anger. "You really thought you could beat me?" he snarls, advancing again. His hand closes around her wrist, his grip ironclad as he forces her back against the wall. Felicity struggles, but Clayton's strength is overwhelming, his obsession fueling every move. She can see the madness in his eyes, the unhinged determination that drives him to cross worlds to claim Madison. "What can't you just let her go?" she gasps, her voice a mixture of anger and desperation. "Why keep killing her?" Clayton's expression shifts, and for a moment, There's a flicker of something resembling pain. "Because she's mine," he whispers. "No one else can have her, not in this world or any other." Using his momentary lapse, Felicity summons every ounce of her strength, driving her knee into his stomach and breaking free of his grip. She dashes into the adjoining room, slamming the door behind her. She fumbles to lock it, heart-pounding as she hears him pounding against the other side. She knows this won't hold him for long, but it gives her a few precious seconds to think. Realizing she has no other choice, Felicity darts toward the device Clayton uses to travel between worlds. A crude but powerful machine nestled in the corner of the room. If she can activate it, perhaps she can destroy it, cutting off Clayton's ability to pursue Madison and ending his reign of terror once and for all. She frantically searches the controls, her fingers fumbling over buttons and dials. But Clayton is relentless. He bursts through the door, advancing on her with murderous intent. "Get away from that," he growls, his voice low and deadly. "You don't know what you're doing." "Oh, I know exactly what I'm doing," she says, defiant. "I'm making sure Madison never has to see you again." She finds what looks like a power switch and slams it. The machine jolts to life, humming with an unnatural energy that fills the room. A blinding light erupts from the device, casting strange shadows and warping the space around them. Clayton's face twists in rage and fear as he realizes what she's done. He lunges toward her, but the machine is destabilizing, sending out waves of energy that distort everything in sight. The room begins to tremble, and Felicity feels herself being pulled toward the device, caught in its gravitational pull. She braces herself, fighting the force. "Clayton, this ends now," she screams, gripping a nearby metal pipe to keep herself grounded. Clayton is less fortunate. In his desperation to reach her, he stumbles forward, losing his footing and slipping into the machine's pull. His screams mix with the mechanical roar as he's drawn into the light, his figure flickering in and out as the device's power reaches a fever pitch. With one final surge, the machine implodes, the light collapsing inward, pulling Clayton with it. And then, in an instant, everything is still. Felicity collapses to the floor, gasping for breath, the silence settling like a shroud over the room. Clayton is gone, his reign of terror finally over. She sits in the empty, echoing space, her body bruised and aching but alive. Relief washes over her as she realizes that Madison, in every version of reality, is safe. She has broken the cycle. Back in her apartment days later, Felicity reflects on the ordeal, still haunted by flashes of Clayton's face. The memories are raw, but she feels a strange peace knowing she saved Madison, and, in a way, saved herself. She opens her computer, ready to tell Madison's story, to expose the terrifying truth that one man's obsession crossed the boundaries of reality. As she types, she feels the lingering tension in her muscles begin to relax. It's over. Finally, truly over. And while the world will never fully understand the strange truth of Clayton Hors, Felicity will make sure that Madison May's name lives on, not as a victim, but as a survivor across worlds.